What is up, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I was actually supposed to have this video out at the beginning of the week and then a second video up around this time, but things have been a little bit crazy this week. Things in the true crime world are just a little bit crazy right now, and actually on Monday, while trying to get ready to film this and finish up the script, was informed through an email that Peggy McGuire, who was a woman that went missing from Eufaula, Oklahoma, that I covered a little over a year ago, was a very suspicious disappearance for those of you that may remember it. Her son also mysteriously went missing on Monday night, and that kind of threw me into overdrive, and I put this video on pause and was going to try to get out a video about him as soon as possible, and within 24 hours he ended up being found, which was awesome. That's the best possible scenario, but my schedule was a little bit wonky after that. So before I'm able to get into this video, which is something that I have been just fully wrapped up in for a couple of weeks now, I need to thank Hunt a Killer for sponsoring today's video and also just being a great company to work with, always supporting my channel and supporting some of my favorite foundations. Now, for those of you who haven't heard me talk about Hunt a Killer before, it is like my dream come true. It's actually a murder mystery subscription box that comes straight to your door monthly, and it's hands down one of my favorite games. I'm a huge game person. I love puzzles. I feel like this is kind of obvious through my choice of work, but this is definitely the most unique game I've ever played. Obviously, all of us have a pretty big interest in true crime and solving mysteries, and that's exactly what you will find in your Hunt a Killer subscription box. Hunt a Killer consists of seasons, and each season consists of 6 different episodes, or 6 separate boxes, all revolving around one crime. This season, the remains of a famous actress from the 1930s were discovered in Julie Adler's family theater that she had taken over. And she remembered, different accounts from the time where this actress went missing. It was initially believed that this actress just ran away, but obviously once the remains were found, it's clear that this was a homicide, not a runaway situation. Each box that you receive is filled with piles of documents and evidence, things that you can touch and really analyze. There's secret codes. You have to really pay attention to the different pieces. There's audio recordings, there's case files, and you are given the task of using all of this to help solve the murder. You have to examine every single piece of evidence where there's hidden clues to eliminate suspects, find the murder weapon. Each box just adds more information, which builds the story and complexity, and sometimes ends up changing your mind on what you thought. If you're like me and you're very impatient as well, you can even expedite your boxes so you get the next one as fast as possible, because once I finish a box, I'm like, wait a minute. I need to know what's in the next one. It's perfect for a monthly Zoom game night with friends. It's a great way to connect that way. It's awesome for a date night where you kind of have to practice working together. You can even get your whole family involved in this and give everyone a different task or a different piece of evidence to look into. And if you're just doing it on your own and you want someone to play with, there's also a massive online, no spoiler community that you can kind of bounce ideas off of. One of my favorite parts about Hunt a Killer is that you feel good about purchasing the subscription because proceeds from each and every box end up going towards one of my favorite places to support, which is the Cold Case Foundation. Right now, just for my subscribers, you can go to huntakiller.com/Danielle Hallen and use code Hallen for 20% off your first box. Thank you again to Hunt a Killer for supporting my channel and for supporting the Cold Case Foundation. Now on to the details of this case. So this one is going to be a sensitive one, and every time I ever cover a video like this, the amount of just arrogant hate comments that I get below are asinine. So I'm already preparing myself now. If you see people say ridiculous things, victim shaming, just things like that down below, do not even respond to them. It's really not worth the time. So today I'm speaking about the death of 19-year-old Asia Graham. I had a lot of people reach out to me on Instagram, a lot of you guys actually first, and then the Instagram that has been created for Asia Graham reached out to me, as well as all of their followers, and her story needs to be told. There's no huge mystery here. We know what happened. Someone's being charged for it, but it's the fact that stuff like this keeps happening. It's the fact that in 2020, I feel like especially, this sort of story has just been exacerbated. Like, these problems have been magnified for some reason in the past year plus. And I think it has a lot to do with the roots of the issue of this story, which is a lack of support to individuals in the military. A lack of responsibility when it comes to commanding officers and the people that are supposed to support and guide these different soldiers. I know quite a few people in the Army and the Marines that are currently in the Army and Marines, and while I feel like soldiers and their needs kind of being neglected has always been a pattern we've seen in the military. Not for everyone, so for those of you who had a great experience, don't come for me. I understand completely, not for everyone, but there is a pretty bad history of just neglect to our soldiers. And like I said, this issue is just getting worse, and this is a prime example of it. Honestly, I could probably get into this for hours. I've spoken about this in a handful of other cases, and a few of you guys have actually been brave enough to come to me in my DMs since I spoke out about Asia Graham, telling me your own stories, which have been devastating. This is a real problem. We spoke about Lavina Johnson and sexual assault in the military and how it can either lead to someone's death because they feel trapped and unhelped, or it can lead to someone's death because they are basically forced to be quiet. It's just insane. I even had a few different comments down in the comment section of my Lavina Johnson video where numerous men were trying to justify women being sexually assaulted in the Army because they're women. And I had someone fighting statistics saying, well, yeah, obviously there's a huge rate of women being sexually assaulted in the military because there's more men and less women. And like, as if that's some sort of justification for this happening. But before I get like way too hot and fired up about this, point blank, it's just a very bad, horrible culture that is very real. It is not something that's being made up. It is something that is a massive issue. And I'll get into more statistics towards the end of the video, but it's just been frustrating. And there was a video that went viral about a week ago of a woman in the military who, I think she was in the Marines specifically, came forward and her video went viral. She was devastated. She was emotional. She was desperately trying to get people to understand that sexual assault in the military is not handled. It is never taken seriously. It is basically hush-hushed, and victims are just forced to become victims over and over again. And it took that for the Secretary of Defense to finally come forward, Lloyd Austin, and say he'll do something. And it shouldn't have taken that. It should not have taken that. It should have taken just the numbers alone for someone to do anything. But instead it took people realizing this is happening behind closed doors and freaking out for them to move. And it's the same thing with the Asia Graham story, where it took numerous victims to come forward and the public basically finding out for the military to say they were doing anything. So now onto just the details of Asia's story. Asia is originally from Cherryville, North Carolina. She was 18 years old at the time that she decided to join the Army. And it's really no surprise she joined the Army. Asia was a really big doer. She wanted to progress in life and she wanted to push other people to progress in life. She was always the encouraging one in the room. Like, she wanted to make sure everyone was pushing towards their dreams and their goals. And she led a lot by example. When she decided to join the Army, a lot of it had to do with the benefits that were kind of given to her or told that she would have. It was sold to her as being a big family and a great way for her to support her mother, a great way for her to have a lot of these extra benefits. And the money that she made in the Army and all these extra benefits would then in turn allow her to make her mom a dependent, and she'd be able to take care of her even further. And this was something that was important to her and important to her family. So in July of 2019, Asia Graham decided to join the Army in Charlotte, North Carolina, in hopes of bettering her family's life. That was her whole goal. She went on to complete basic training at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and then she went on to Fort Jackson, South Carolina to complete advanced training. And when she was done with that, she branched off into becoming a human resource specialist. After completing her basic and advanced training, she was ultimately stationed at Fort Bliss, which is in El Paso, Texas, in early December of 2019. And she saw this as finally its beginning, like, I'm on track. But it very quickly, like within that exact same month, all came crashing down around her in the worst way possible. The same month that Asia arrived at Fort Bliss, she was sexually assaulted by a fellow private first class named Christian Alvarado. And just as an example of like where this is headed, his name wasn't even released until last month. So this man sexually assaulted her. This is one of her first experiences on base in the Army, and she was devastated. She immediately told her family, and she immediately went to her superiors, which is exactly what she should have done. And a lot of people don't even make it to that step because they're so scared to report. They're so scared of their attacker, or they're so scared that they won't be believed. But she pushed through and she reported it to who she was supposed to early that February, so about a month after it happened. Unfortunately, her superiors did not act the way that they should have. Her superiors, and this is kind of like a gray area, I've seen that they were supposed to technically take this up to military investigators, like up to higher officials, so that it could be investigated and they could kind of move forward with prosecuting, putting charges. But for some reason, the commanding officer decided to instead deal with it themselves and basically told her to stop talking about it. Told her, okay, sorry this happened, but don't bring it up again. And that was devastating for Asia for obvious reasons. This immediately put Asia into a very dangerous and traumatic situation. This wasn't just some random person that came and attacked her. Christian Alvarado was in the same barracks as Asia. Christian Alvarado was in the same company as Asia. She saw him from the time she went to bed at night to the time she went to work in the morning, all throughout the day. So she was having to be in close proximity with her attacker, knowing that her commanding officer and her superiors didn't care about that, and that she was told to just kind of deal with it and hope that it wasn't going to happen again. So after spending months in this sort of situation, in June of 2020, she decided enough was enough, and she talked to her mom, and she had the encouragement of her family, and she said she was going to re-report the incident because she could not live around her attacker any longer. So for the second time in less than a year, she went to military officials and informed them of the sexual assault. This time, they decided they were, in fact, going to do an investigation. So during this investigation, however, Christian Alvarado was still allowed to be on base. He was still in her barracks. He was still in her company. So for months, from June to October, at this point when her attacker's aware he's being investigated, he knows that she said something, he's been questioned, they're still being forced to be in the same proximity, which again is just such a dangerous situation. It took until October for military officials to finally announce that they had in fact found enough probable cause to suggest that Christian Alvarado had likely in fact assaulted Asia, but they didn't really do much after figuring that out. The main thing that I've seen they did was move him to a different barracks. He was in a different company. He was no longer allowed to work or live near Asia, which is a huge breath of fresh air, obviously, but he was still on base. And on top of that, they decided to give Asia a military protective order, which is obviously helpful, as well as mandatory therapy, which she actually really wanted and asked for. At this point, Asia was not pleased that he was still even on base at all. She still didn't feel safe, so she decided that she was going to move in with her brother who lived nearby. And this is when more of the truth really started to come out. So Asia told her brother that she had, of course, been given this therapist by the Army, but that the therapist was just like her commanding officer, just there to pretty much save face. Her therapist that she went to also told her to be quiet and to stop speaking about the sexual assault. So this therapy that she had begged for and asked for and told the military she needed, she was sent to, but only for them to say in closed doors with protection, again, to be quiet. Everything was just for show. Asia told her brother that all that the military cared about was the Army doctrine and covering up everyone's wrongdoings and making sure that Asia didn't speak too loud or yell too loud about what happened to her so that nothing would really ever have to happen. Trauma and the lack of action against Christian, this protection that was being given to him while the actual victim was basically being left to struggle, was eating Asia alive. She ended up spiraling into drinking and taking pills to try to ease some of her pain because the therapy being provided was doing nothing for her. And while she was at her absolute rock bottom lowest, the Army forced her back on base, a place where she didn't feel safe, she didn't feel protected, and she felt like not a single person actually had her back. By December, shortly after being put back on base, Asia wrote her mom a letter, and in this letter, she told her mom she was ready to fight, that she could no longer live this way, and that she did not think it was fair at all, the treatment that Christian was getting, whereas she was getting this lack of treatment, and that she had actually already spoken to a lawyer. Like, she was ready to take down the army, she was ready to take down Christian. But unfortunately, days later, literally days after sending this letter on December 31st, 2020, Asia was found unresponsive in her barracks and was declared death by military emergency personnel. Now, unfortunately, in the United States, especially in Texas, and especially in the year of 2020, this kind of headline was very common. Very common. All of the initial articles that were released on Asia's death stated that military investigators didn't believe foul play was involved. The cause of death wasn't released. It was always, we're so sorry about this, we don't know what happened, but it wasn't homicide. And I think that was kind of an attempt to get people to be like, oh, okay, like, maybe she just couldn't handle it, or, to brush it off. Even after death, it felt like they were trying to just brush her off and sweep her under the rug. The Army even released a statement saying, and I quote, "The Iron Eagle team is deeply saddened at the loss of our friend and teammate." It was played off like a senseless accident or tragedy, and not what was actually happening, until the media finally got their hands on information about what the past year had been like for Asia and finally put it out to the public. They found that Asia had been attempting to report the sexual assault since February, according to family. Obviously, it was ignored in February when it was released, so there was no kind of evidence per se for this, but she had told the family that she reported it then and was ignored. But there was evidence that at the very least, she had been talking about this since June, and it was now almost January, and nothing had happened. Because there are plenty of people that know the history of sexual assault in the military, and that lots of women are either killed to keep them quiet or they end up killing themselves because they are just left with their attacker, people freaked out. They knew that there had to be something more to this. There was an absolute uproar, and the Army, because of this, basically was forced to act, and it should never have come to this point, especially given further details that came out. On January 8th, Major General Sean Barnaby, who is the commanding general at Fort Bliss, did order that charges against Private First Class Christian Alvarado be referred to a general court-martial. So it seems like they did have charges kind of pending in this sexual assault, but that they weren't really being immediately acted on, so they were moving them somewhere else. At this point, though, they were still refusing to release Christian's name, and they actually put out a handful of statements saying that, it's innocent till proven guilty. We have to protect our soldiers. We have to protect their integrity. And all I could think of when I was reading that BS was, what about Asia? When were you going to protect her? You won't even release this man's name to the public. I'm trying to not overstep and say something crazy, but you guys understand how effed up this is. Within days, Christian Alvarado was in fact arraigned, and this is when the length of the charges came out, which again made people a lot more angry. So not only was Christian Alvarado facing charges in the sexual assault of Asia in December of 2019, but 2 other women on base as well. And the issue with this is that they knew about at least one of these women since June. So not only during this investigation that went from June to October did they find that Asia was sexually assaulted by Christian Alvarado and really didn't do anything and kept him on base around these individuals, but he had also sexually assaulted another woman. And it was just before this investigation launched. And the third woman was after the investigation. So clearly he had zero intentions on stopping because he knew no one was going to do anything. Christian Alvarado was charged with the sexual assault of an unconscious woman on May 8th, 2020, which was 5 months after he attacked Asia. And he also was charged with sexually assaulting another woman on base on August 26th, 2020, over 2 months after the initial investigation started. Both of those victims to this day remain unidentified, which I honestly don't blame them. How can you see how Asia's treated and it led to her death and feel comfortable even naming yourself in a situation like this? But if somehow they end up stumbling on this video, I applaud their bravery in coming forward. I stand behind them absolutely. I believe their stories. And I hope they get justice for what happened to them. Not only is he being charged with just sexual assault of these 3 women, but one of the women that he assaulted, he's actually getting aggravated sexual assault charges for attempted strangulation. And then there's also 2 additional charges of lying to investigators. He lied to investigators in June. On June 11th, shortly after the investigation initially launched, when Asia re-reported the sexual assault, this is when they, I guess, approached him about this other woman, which to me indicates another woman had possibly reported this immediately after her sexual assault. And again, it wasn't questioned until months later. If it happened in May, they didn't do anything until June, but they questioned him about this. And he admitted he had sex with them. But he said it was consensual sex, which was very obviously not true. And he lied to investigators about this. He was charged for that. And there was apparently a second time when he lied to investigators. I don't know the details about this, but clearly he knew that he just had to say what was, wanted to be heard, and everything would go away and he could continue assaulting these women. No questions asked. I don't know when the case will progress. I have not seen when he's supposed to actually go on trial for this. I know a lot of things are backed up, so there's really no telling. But the most messed up thing, again, is that he's still on base. This man apparently was bailed out. I've seen even that he was bailed out by his commanding officer. You know, because of an article that was actually just posted. This is the first mention I've seen of cause of death, that Asia died of an overdose. This young, bright, worthy young woman was so neglected by those that were supposed to support and protect her in the military that she got so wrapped up in drugs to try to ease her pain that it killed her. And I want that to sink in to like every cell in everyone's body, to understand that while these individuals may not have physically put their hands on her and ended her life, their absolute neglect and lack of caring for the trauma that she went through is what landed her here. Her mom has since stated that she regrets signing the papers that put Asia in the military, and that these recruiters just blindly make promises to these teenagers to get them to join, whether that be, in high school still or right out of high school. They portray this false reality, and these commanding officers and officials just don't uphold what's being promised. And unfortunately, this isn't the first time we've heard a parent of a victim say this. Lavina Johnson's father said the exact same thing. He was like, these recruiters should not be speaking to our teenagers. They should not be playing the army off as this very innocent, calm family situation, because it's just, the reality is very far from it. At least sell it for what it is. It all reminds me of a quote by Colin Powell that says, and I quote, "Leadership is solving problems. The day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day you have stopped leading them. They've either lost confidence that you can help or concluded you do not care. Either case is a failure of leadership." And this is exactly what happened to Asia and what's been happening to so many individuals. A failure of leadership. Despite the Army claiming repeatedly that they have done things exactly the way that they should have, I will say, yes, they did launch an investigation. I'm happy they did that in June. They should have done it in February, They should have actually immediately charged this man and taken him off base. Make this man take leave. And text messages and other bits of information were found on Asia's phone to just support that nothing really was being done. She sent text messages just days before her death to a fellow woman in the Army, I think a few of them, and they said, and I quote, I told my non-commissioned officer, and he didn't take it that serious. So it seems like up until right before her death, she was telling people, look, I'm going to act on this. I am going to do something about what's happening to me, and that they still didn't really care. She also revealed in these texts that she even told a female sergeant, hoping for some extra sliver of empathy because it was a fellow woman. And the female sergeant basically told her that the same thing happened to her when she arrived on Fort Bliss and that they basically needed to just dismiss it.
I love marching. I love seeing cadences. It's so much fun. It's so much fun.
Private First Class Asia Graham posted this to YouTube shortly after arriving at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas in December 2019.
But if you're like, nah, I got this, then you got it. Especially for my females,
Her brother, Andrew Koenigsfeld, says she always wanted to help others, whether it's the homeless or teens interested in enlisting.
Every day, every time I talk to my sister, she always preaches, you know, go get your goals. What do you want to do with your life, Drew?
Graham's goal, to use her Army benefits to take care of her mother, Nicole Graham.
She loved me so much, and I loved her so much. Like, we were very close, very close.
But her family says behind that smile and energy in her YouTube video, a traumatic event. The same month she posted this video, Graham's family says she was sexually assaulted by another soldier. Her family says Graham reported what happened to her superiors, but her mom accuses Army leadership of failing to help and protect her daughter. We asked the Army about these allegations and are awaiting a response. Last month, her family says Graham told them she felt better and wanted to get justice.
That she was ready to fight that, and then that got taken away.
Investigators say Graham was found dead in her barracks room New Year's Eve, exactly 1 year after she posted that YouTube video. She was 19 years old. The Army says they don't suspect foul play, but Graham's family still has a lot of questions.
She wasn't supposed to go. She wasn't supposed to go. It wasn't her time. I don't understand why it was supposed to be her time.
The Instagram page for Asia has also been sharing different messages sent by other female soldiers in the Army at Fort Bliss that have personally seen Christian Alvarado over the past few weeks when all of this is happening. You know, he was arraigned. He's out on bail thanks to a commanding officer, and now he's just walking around like nothing happened. There's a woman who just messaged them the other day that was like, I just walked past him. He is just laughing with his friends as if he has not ruined the lives of multiple women. And we already know that he does not care what happens to him, and that he doesn't think anything will actually happen to him because even after being investigated, he went on to sexually assault someone else. Is there another victim in the past month? Will there be another victim until he goes to trial? Like, it's just mind-blowing to me that this man's just allowed to walk free on this base. As I mentioned at the start of my video, there was a viral video from a woman in the military, the Marines, and she, again, was explaining that it's stuff like this that causes women to end their life in the military. You know, they're just being dismissed left and right. They're not believed. They're not protected. And it's devastating.
This morning I posted a fucking TikTok about how fucking unfair it is that I've dedicated my life to the military and the Marine Corps and everything that I've done, and that I was able to see my fucking perpetrator in court, and how much it fucking sucked that he was being forced out of the military, that he would be getting an honorable discharge. Well, not even fucking 10 minutes ago, I just got word that this motherfucker will be getting retained because it went all the way up across the board. Everybody said that they would not retain him. And the fucking head honcho, the fucking CG, with all of the proof and a fucking admission to guilt, decided that they will retain him. And this is exactly why fucking females in the military fucking kill themselves. This is exactly why nobody fucking takes us seriously. Yo, what the fuck?
This particular video ended up making it all the way to the Pentagon, where the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, decided to hold a meeting in regards to sexual assault in the military. And he did publicly state that he agreed that they have not gotten it right, that they have repeatedly failed. They have not protected individuals in the military that have been victims the way that they should have. And he agreed that something needed to be done and they needed to work on it, but he didn't really state what exactly that means. And a lot of people are pinpointing what Biden said about a year ago, where he stated he plans to specifically deal with sexual assault. And he even broke it down further, saying that he believed commanders needed to totally be removed from sexual assault reporting, as well as any sort of prosecuting decisions in regards to it, because these commanding officers should not have the power to decide whether someone that's reporting a sexual assault can proceed to charges or not, or if an investigation is done or not. They shouldn't have the ability to do that, because so many of them want to be on this high pedestal and they want to make sure that everyone under them looks pristine and that they look like they do a great job. So they just kind of pick and choose which rules they follow and which they don't to ensure that they come out looking the best. And this is where Camilla Shadley and retired Major General Robert Shadley come in. They are a married couple that work for a nonprofit called Never Alone Advocacy. And if you are someone that is in the military, I highly suggest you looking up Never Alone Advocacy. They actually work with victims of MSA, or military sexual assault. It shows that in the past decade, the number of reported sexual assaults in the military has doubled from roughly around 3,000 to 8,000. But that is just the reported sexual assaults. It is believed that in reality, it's upwards of 20,000 individuals per year, you guys. That means that well over half of the individuals that are believed to be sexually assaulted don't come forward and say anything because they're terrified to. And then the ones that do come forward end up like Asia, where they're not believed and they end their life, or their attacker does that for them. Shadleys have spoken about Asia and also tried to make sure everyone's aware that this is not new. This is not something uncommon, and that everyone possible needs to be aware of it to ensure that some sort of change is made. There were 4 separate individuals that were higher ranking that knew about Asia's assault. And they hope that all 4 are held accountable for that, so that maybe this sends a message to other officials in the military to not ignore these people that quite literally rely on you for their safety and well-being. They've also commented on what Lloyd Austin said after the viral video, as well as Biden's statement a year ago about fixing these issues. And they've blatantly said they worry that the Army just simply won't comply, that they'll hear these new rules, there will be these new regulations, and they'll be like, yeah, okay, but we're just not going to do it behind closed doors. And they've said they feel like it's going to take constant pressure from someone else outside of the military, holding them accountable at every single turn for any real change to happen. This is everywhere. Things on our military bases are not well, and they haven't been well for a very long time. And this year, I think, really, like I said, magnified this. I'm pretty sure every single person on this video right now knows what Fort Hood is because of this year. And Fort Hood has actually been privately investigated at this point, and they're also in Texas, and it's been found, and I quote, that they have a very permissive environment for sexual assault. Over 14 officers from Fort Hood alone, officers and fellow soldiers, have been either suspended or fired after the investigation showed things that they had done, wrongdoings. And that's just 14 officers that they had evidence on. No telling what has kind of gone unspoken. There were over 24 deaths at Fort Hood last year, soldier deaths, between homicide, suicide, and accidents. That's a lot of individuals. And it was like I was saying at the beginning, I feel like it's just a total failure across the board of leadership. Soldiers don't feel like they can come forward to their commanding officers and their superiors to report something that they're going through, because they will either be deemed as weak or they will be disregarded. That puts people in situations where they feel trapped and they feel their only escape is through one of those methods. It's absolutely horrifying. And from what I'm seeing in Fort Bliss and these complaints that are now just coming out left and right after all of this has been kind of publicized and put in the spotlight, Fort Bliss is not seeming to be much better than Fort Hood. And I'm sure that if most bases had these private investigations done, this is the kind of thing that they would find at every single one. Raising awareness about this is so important because I feel like this is just the secret kind of dark side that people do know about, but people don't push a lot. And there's just not enough done to change it and do anything different. And I feel like it's one of those situations where you've created this environment where everyone feels like they have to be up to some certain standard. And that if they're anything less than that, you know, a whole list of things could go from there. They can feel all sorts of different ways, but that makes people more willing to step on and harm other people to make sure that they look better. And when you have that sort of mentality going through a place like a military base, it's so dangerous, life-threatening, toxic. It's just a bad place to be. If proper steps had been taken to take Asia seriously from the start, if Christian Alvarado was removed from the base as he should have been, she likely would be here right now. If she hadn't been lied to by recruiters and the Army hadn't been played up as a certain way, she would probably still be here right now. And that's not just the case for Asia, you guys. There are dozens and dozens and dozens. I dare each and every one of you to do a quick Google search on this and you will just see name after name after picture after picture. Right now, as we're waiting to see what happens with Christian Alvarado's trial, and he's for some unknown reason just happily wandering Fort Bliss. If you're at Fort Bliss, be aware of him. Be aware of how much you need to stay away from him. But also, there is a petition happening on change.org. I will have the link down below because people that care about Asia want to make sure she's remembered and to make sure people are aware of what actually happened. So they are trying to build a statue in JF Gregory Park in Richmond Hill, Georgia. This is, from my understanding, where Asia's mother lives currently and where Asia lived for a while. And the people in the community were really close with Asia, and it's actually 90% military families in this area. And they want to put up the statue so that, first of all, obviously she is remembered and can be honored. And second of all, to raise awareness so that when people, especially these military families and children of military families are seeing this statue and they're understanding why this, young woman was so important to make a statue of, it's because of some very scary realities in the military. And they're hoping that this will maybe help push these younger individuals in these military families that may go on to be in the military to keep fighting to change this and change these statistics and save these women and men that are just being sexually assaulted and ignored. I will make sure to leave all of the information possible down below, as well as any kind of resource that I can find for someone who may be out there who is dealing with military sexual assault. I am really hoping after this viral video that Lloyd Austin really does try to do something. And I hope that Biden sticks to his word, that he's going to directly deal with sexual assault in the military, especially the issue with commanders kind of having this, end-all be-all decision-making process. It shouldn't have taken other victims coming forward and the media digging into the story for things to come to light, for them to actually press charges on Christian Alvarado. It's just, I could go on forever, but I'll go ahead and stop before I talk myself in circles. Make sure that you support those around you in the military. Make sure that you are keeping an eye out on your family that's in the military. Make sure that if you are in the military, you are someone that is pushing for things like this to stop. But that is all that I have for you guys today. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to Asia's story and listen to why this is such a big problem and why we need to fix it. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and go, you guys. If you haven't hit the subscribe button already, go ahead and hit it down below so you can become a part of the Howlin' fam so that hopefully we can bring them home together or bring them justice together. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.